All right, I think we're finally ready. I know it's like it was a big buildup. It was like we're all just teasers to get everybody ready to go this morning. So I hope we've teased enough. And you're now ready to get started with our PBIS coaches session this morning. Welcome. It's our fourth session of the PBIS Coaches Network. It's officially March now. I can't hardly believe it, but we're only 10 days away from changing the clocks and 18 days away from the start of spring. So I don't know if any of you have started that countdown. We have a lot of people in our office here that like to give countdowns for things like spring, or not spring, for Christmas, even for St. Patrick's Day. I'm starting a countdown for the clock change and for spring to start. So I'm just warning you and anyone else in here that happens to be from our office, which I absolutely love the sounds of that, 18 days away from the start of spring. But it is March. And I just basically, wow, it's hard to believe that it's already March. Here with us this morning. I am Matthew Heath, one of three members of the State Support Team Region 5 PBS team. Those other team members are here with me this morning, and you should be way more excited to hear from them than me because they're the real brains behind the operations.
Not true, Matthew, not true.
I think a good demonstration or reflection of that was this morning's technology, which I have a new computer. So I feel like I have a little bit of an excuse. I have a new computer and none of the settings are what they should be. And that was some of what was taking place this morning, not just with me, but with our tech department actually having to change some stuff. So we're figuring that out and it's a good thing. I have to apologize that you all have to be sort of the guinea pigs to us or to me figuring out all the bumps along the way. But
I was just going to say, Matthew, this is probably the group to actually work with because we are the PBIS group. We are used to working with things that might have some little bumps in the road. We're supposed to be able to zig and zag.
yeah, well, I really just wanted to highlight that you guys were the brains and I just did a few things with technology and sometimes I don't even do those well. And clearly I proved that this morning. So, wow, it's a great start. Anyhow, I'm going to let my counterparts introduce themselves at this time. So if you will, Jessica, we'll start with you since you're right at the top of the page there.
Yeah, so I am Jessica Dedick here with SSTR5.
And I am Marla Peacock here with SSTR5 and we are ready for the day. So take it away.
So keeping along the same lines of technology that I was just talking about, we do have active social media accounts or somewhat active social media accounts. Those would be Facebook, Twitter, and our YouTube channel, which if you follow any of the PBIS team, which we're assuming you probably do since you're here with us this morning, most of the YouTube channel, we're always putting stuff on YouTube. Today's session will get shared on YouTube. We'll share a link with that. It'll be an unlisted link, but as long as you have that link, you'll have access to it. But all of our TFI Tuesday recordings get put there. There's nothing special about them other than, they're extraordinarily special. What I'm getting at is those are public, so you just need to go to our channel to find those. Those aren't hard to find. We did lose our YouTube channel for a week. That wasn't my fault. So if you follow us and found that all of a sudden you're not a follower of our YouTube channel, that was YouTube. We did manage to get that back. We didn't lose anything except for some settings. And obviously what I just said about our followers, we lost all those. So if you follow the PBS team and the TFI Tuesday series, you might have to refollow us to sort of be back in the what's the word I'm looking for?
In the know.
In the know, yeah. I kept wanting to say, yes, that is exactly what I wanted to say. I just wasn't going to phrase it that way. And that's
What's wrong with that way?
No. I was going to phrase exactly how Jessica said it. But the words that I was coming up in my head were all the right words. It just wasn't being put into that particular strand of words.
Reboot you.
I didn't do that.
We're still on. It's all good.
Anyhow, But before we get things started or underway this morning, let's see how everyone's doing. I think we all know how I'm doing, so let's see how everyone else is doing. A fun check-in that we have for you this morning. It's based on teachers found on popular television shows. So starting with number 1 there, most should recognize that teacher from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. That is Mr. Lauren Sachs. Number 2 is Mrs. Grotke from Disney's Recess. Number 3 is Walter White from Breaking Bad. Number 4, Mrs. Puff from SpongeBob. 5, Dewey Finn from School of Rock. 6, Mrs. Frizzle from the Magic School Bus. 7, Mr. Feeney from Boy Meets World. 8, Carrie Bliss by Saved by the Bell. So if we have any 90s fans, you'll recognize.
Isn't that 80s? Is it 90s?
Hey,
I think that, I'm not sure. We're not dating anybody here.
any of us. Okay. And Mr. Number 9 is Mr. Garvey from Key and Peele, who made like the whole substitute video skit famous. So which one of those teachers do you most closely relate to this morning? How are you doing? How are you feeling? Which one of those can you relate to the most? And you can either unmute yourself or throw that in the chat. Just sort of a fun way for us to check in how we're doing. All of those 9 teachers all have pretty distinguishable personalities or traits. So
Seen a lot of ones. A lot of people feel like they're just talking into the void.
That happens. I feel that way sometimes.
I can't believe I'm getting ready to say this, but I probably feel like, and I'm just assuming, but probably 4, Mrs. Puff. Because technology's been a bit like SpongeBob driving the car, because she is the driver's ed teacher, right? Am I saying that right? She is the driver's ed teacher, and she has to ride with SpongeBob, which is always a really amusing time. But that's how I'm feeling. High in anxiety. Say that 3 times.
We need to do a relaxation technique.
Maybe.
Let's take a little breathing.
Breathe.
Best time to teach calm?
Not right now.
Not right now.
I have to
That's a lesson.
shout out to Greta though. Greta picked her own teacher from South Park. So you go, Greta.
There you go. Yeah.
Hmm?
I like that.
Yeah.
Jessica, I agree. I so want to be Miss Frizzle. I may not be Miss Frizzle, but I so want to be Miss Frizzle.
Aspire to
Yes.
have that spunk and
Well, not only the spunk, she has magic.
she does have magic.
She has magic. You know how I
Just
feel
like
about magic.
Right up there with rainbows and unicorns, so.
Mhm. But I also like the goofiness of Dewey Finn, but I digress.
Well, he wasn't even a teacher. That was what was crazy about it.
He's a substitute teacher.
He didn't even have the qualifications for that. He faked it all in order to,
still
it was his
was a
roommate. It was his friend that they lived together. It was him that was actually supposed to be the substitute. He just happened to like answer the phone and needed money. But it worked out. I mean, honestly, he would have been a fun teacher.
I think so.
I'm looking for someone to teach me how to play the guitar or ukulele. Jessica.
Hey, next staff meeting, here we go.
All right, well, let's hope we either improve upon how you're feeling now and you maybe become somebody else, or maybe if you're happy with it, with how you're feeling this morning, all we do is energize you and excite you more so by the end of today's session. But thank you for doing that with us. As always, we're going to have you share a win with us. We would normally dedicate this time right now for you to talk about one of your recent wins that you'd like to celebrate, and we'll do that. But I'm going to give you just a few minutes to think about that before I ask you to share. So start thinking about something that you'd like to share with us that you're excited about. And after I go through the next few slides, we'll come back to this and we'll give you some time to properly share. So be thinking about that. And I'm just going to share some sort of logistical things. And you can be thinking about one of the celebrations that you'd like to share. As always, we have a note-taking document this morning. I can't look at the chat, but I'm sure somebody's already shared that in the chat.
Has been shared and I just put the Padlet in as well.
Perfect. And we also have that designated Padlet just for the coaches sessions as well. You can find it at the links that Marla has provided. Those are always there. Our meeting matrix. As always, just some of the normal things, turning on your cameras, completing any sort of pre-work that we might have assigned, which sounds really formal. We didn't assign any pre-work, so you can rest at ease.
The pre-work was to log in.
There you go. You made it. Yeah. Presume positive intent, be active participants. I don't need to read all those, but we really do appreciate when your cameras are on. It sounds silly, but being able to like see your faces on our end is pretty rewarding for each of us. And I don't want to minimize that, but we also understand sometimes your cameras need to be off as well, which again, we also understand. So we also love to hear from you. Your participation is what makes our time together rewarding for everyone. I can promise you that after each of the sessions, when we look at the feedback that you all provide, every single time that we look at it, it tells us that what you want to do is, or what you want more of is to hear from each other. And the only way that happens is if you're an active participant. We build in breaks. We do have a built-in break this morning. But if that doesn't align with your personal needs, by all means, take care of yourself. And I always like to end that last one with, I always like to highlight that last one, have fun while learning. I do think that that's important. There's plenty of things in our lives that are, I don't know, way more serious than, and not to take anything away from our time together or the seriousness of what we're going to talk about. But this also does need to be sort of that, I don't know, sort of informal time for us all to share, to talk through maybe some of the issues and some of the celebrations that we're having, learn from one another. And the only way to really kind of do that and I don't know, have it be rewarding for all of us is to make it somewhat fun. I know it's fun for us, so hopefully you find a little bit of joy in it as well. Our objectives, again.
They sure do look like a lot.
It does. It also, sort of looks like our agenda. So, but we're going to look at, explore some feedback, resources on feedback, engage in some pseudo feedback data. As you can see, everything's sort of aligned with feedback, and that's pretty much what we're going to talk about. Marla alluded earlier to getting into some of the recognition process, because I know everyone's interested in that because of all the changes. So we've dedicated some time for that, as well as we have some dedicated office hours coming up shortly that are strictly designated to just talking about the recognition system and what that looks like. And obviously, if need be, we'll also schedule additional time if we have to, or change our times. We're all pretty flexible in that regard. So that's today's objective, the agenda, the basics of feedback, the practicality of feedback and next steps, those binder updates, and then we're going to close out and ask you to complete a short little survey for us. As always, Jessica, you want to highlight the high five?
I would love to. So this year, one of the additions to our meetings is our own recognition system, or our own acknowledgement system that we kind of stole from, I believe, Boss was one of the ones that utilizes a virtual high five. So keep an eye on the chats because we are acknowledging those of you that are meeting expectations, because we do realize that you guys are very busy. We really appreciate your engagement, your participation, your discussion. So as you are going through the meeting, keep an eye on your chat, because Marla over here might send you a little high five just to really show our appreciation for your engagement, for your participation in our meeting, because we absolutely value that. We would not be a network if it was just the three of us talking to a screen. So we really appreciate that. So keep an eye on your chat for our little acknowledgement system, and we'll talk more about acknowledgements a little bit later.
Thank you, Jessica. All right, so while talking about high fives, let's go back to asking you to share your PBIS celebrations and your own high fives. So what's going well? What would you like to celebrate? What do you want to share, I guess, this morning with us as far as wins go? Because we know that the work that you're doing out there is great. So now is the time for you to sort of stand on that soapbox and share some of that with all of us. So maybe we could take some of it back to our own schools and implement some of those same practices. So I don't know who's going to be daring enough to start, but we'd love to hear from all or some or just whoever, just none of us. Marla, Jessica, Matt needed to stop talking. So who'd like to start?
I do want to say, even though I'm supposed to stop talking, we do have 2 in the chat. So those,
We might have 3.
we might have 3 now.
Yeah.
Okay, so they
We do.
can always unmute or. Oh, yes, we have 3 now.
Yeah.
Okay.
What do we got?
Well, I'm going to give a shout out to Summit Academy Secondary Youngstown because they are my peeps too. Everybody on this call is my peeps. But they have been working so hard at getting their PBIS up and running. And they have something called the full value contract. So as you can see in the chat, it says the students at SAYS can identify the 4 expectations that connect with their full value contract. And I'm going to add in another layer that they are demonstrating them as well. So yay. Oh, this is bad. Yay to SAYS. This is bad. But what's the other one in the chat?
So we
Jessica?
also have, Michelle was sharing that she has a Save Promise Club that's about to launch. And it's I believe an anti-bullying committee. Michelle, I know you're in a classroom right now, so you can't really share. But that sounds fantastic. And I've heard of the Save Promise Club from other schools. So that's a great addition to your program. Thank you for sharing that.
And I just have to do a shout out to Leanne because, well, I don't know if you've noticed, she has a little accoutrement on. And I loved it, so I had to comment privately on it. And I guess today is Mustache Day at BL Miller. So, I love that. So if anybody else wants to join in on Mustache Day, you have at it.
I have a pack of mustaches in my bag downstairs.
Oh,
These are
Jessica. You're
I'm so sorry
slacking.
that I
Slacking. And Marie, I don't know if you want to unmute or if you want us to share for you, but you have a beautiful voice. You can easily share about, I think what you put in the chat is pretty cool.
Oh, she's gonna walk.
So little story about the
Oh, wait.
and mustache.
Yeah. Oh, wait.
So I know our friends, our best friends, their son, I think he's in 1st grade this year, went to school yesterday because it was mustache day. And he happened to be like the only student in his class that wore a mustache and he ended up going into the bathroom and removing the mustache because he felt awkward. But I was like, well, that's like, that's why when you said Leanne, I didn't have everybody up and I couldn't see everybody. So when you said Leanne was wearing a mustache, I knew right away why. But I also was like, how awesome that the teacher is wearing the mustache because it would prevent what happened to our son's friend yesterday. But anyhow, it wasn't anyone's fault. I just felt bad, anyhow, sorry.
Okay. All right, Marie, you were unmuting a second ago.
I was, but I had to run out of the room because our announcements were on. So, so it was actually fine that he started talking. It was much better that way. We trained our bus drivers on the framework of PBIS over, I think, right before Christmas break. And we have little cardinal tickets that the kids get inside of the classroom as whole class rewards. And so we tried to implement that into the bus situation because the bus drivers are having some problems with behaviors and keeping things under control. So we printed 1,800 cardinal tickets for them and distributed to all the bus drivers at the elementary level. And they're using those to pass out and then bring in to create that partnership with the elementary classroom. So some teachers are doing it differently. They're rewarding immediately if they have their own token system, if a student brings it in, or they're collecting 5 at a time. And then we have whole class cardinals here, and that's our whole class framework. And so then they're rewarding the whole class once we get 5. So it's just being done a little bit differently. We just started this after the first of the year. So far, so good. You know, we have some teachers who are using it, some not, but we're doing the best that we can to get it up and running.
I heard one thing that I really want to shout out about is we talk about all the time that your PBIS team truly are the superheroes, the catalysts, whatever you want to call them, to take this message out and to help and build it throughout your community. And you just demonstrated that. That's what we're supposed to do. And I know, Matthew, you brought up a little interesting fact while Marie was talking, because it resonated with something else that we learned the other day.
Oh,
That was
that was nothing more than a lead in for me to talk about it. Okay, I got you. Yeah, no, the other day, somebody gave us a statistic about the percentage of staff members in a district, and I don't know if it's accurate or if it would hold to be true across all districts, but the number was 33% of our staffs in schools are support staff. So that would include like your bus drivers, you know, like your lunch, all your lunch, I mean, so many people. And if you think about like a third of the people in your district are your school bus drivers and all those people. And oftentimes we don't provide them with the proper training, and sometimes they're the first sort of people that our students see. And again, when you think about a building, if it's made up of, or, you know, just staff members, I guess, in a district, if a third of the staff are support staff and they're not properly trained, but they're also some of the first people that our students see, then there's always going to be this mismatch of, you know, what our expectations are versus what the students might see modeled in those individuals, which there's going to be an obvious problem there. You know, if what is expected in the classroom and what is reflected from the teacher in the classroom is one thing, and then it's something entirely different when they step on the school bus, then the kids are always going to play this sort of like wrestling match with, well, I guess it's different, you know, like I have to do this here or behave this way or act this way or consequence. I mean, there's just so many things that it becomes a lot to juggle if you're, you know, no matter what age, I guess.
It creates a disconnect in your system.
Yeah, but think about that from the perspective of a 6-year-old and trying to juggle it, as well as, let's be honest, a teenager who at some point in time can see that or knows that.
Oh, yeah.
And then decides to
Test it.
exactly.
Every possible chance.
Yeah, they question that stuff. And if they don't question it to you, the adult, they certainly question it. I mean, because I'm amazed at the things that my son says just about life in general, about things like that. Like, you know, like, well, how come this versus, and you go, that's interesting that you picked up on that. So the kids, they do pick up on those things. So I think it's awesome.
You're also giving another spoiler of later in our discussion today is about a new resource that's available that can provide training, free training for not only your certified staff, but also now is available for even your classified staff. So that's a little teaser that there are some resources available now for all of our staff, because previously it was restricted, it was limited, I should say. And thank you, Leanne, for also sharing that they are also working to train their support staff as well. And I had the wonderful opportunity of coming out and meeting her lovely bus drivers and some of her cafeteria workers and her custodians. We had a wonderful conversation about some of the expectations that maybe we didn't consider nuances of those unique locations. So we had a really good conversation with some of her support staff. So thanks for inviting me out there.
All right. I'm going to move on to our intention setting. This is not anything new, but if you're new to us this morning, we always like to start with some intention setting, which is just for a little bit of time for you to just sit here and think about what it is that you want to take away from this session. I've got sort of a definition there at the bottom on the screen. I don't need to read that to you, but just let's take 30 seconds, a minute for you to write down at the end of the session, I want to know or learn more about this. And then also along with that, what you're going to do to achieve that. So just take 30 seconds. I'm going to mute us on a notepad, on a piece of scratch paper, on the back of a student's homework. I don't care what it is, but just think about, I mean, some of you came to this session with something particular in mind, with specific information that you wanted to obtain. And in order for us to help fulfill that, we need to know what that is, and as well as you need to communicate that to us. So if that's the case, by all means, write that down and make sure that that happens. So I'm going to hit the mute and we're going to give you a little bit of time to write that down, and we're going to come back and move on. All right, well, welcome back. Hopefully you took advantage of that time that we just gave you for you to write down some of your intentions and how you plan to achieve those. And hopefully we can fulfill what your intentions are for today's session. But we're going to get right into our first little bit of content. But I just love this quote. Over 2,000 published studies tell us that hope is one of the single best predictors of well-being across the lifespan. And I honestly, I would love to talk about hope at length, but today isn't the time for that. However, I do want us to think about hope differently because we tend to underestimate the power of hope. And trust me, I'm not one of those frilly, blow smoke. That's not me. But we tend to underestimate the power of hope as if hope plays no part in our everyday lives. But I truly believe it does. I believe it plays a much bigger role than we give it credit for. We sort of treat it like it's this magical pixie dust and we sprinkle it all over. And while not being entirely convinced that your hope is going to produce actual results. But the fact is, though, real results isn't whether what you hoped for came to fruition or not. It's the optimistic state that it provides you with. And that sort of possibility of something being better, right? It kept you going, or it keeps you going. And I'm willing to bet there's not a day in our lives where we all don't lean on some form of hope or at some time in the day. I hope it doesn't rain. I hope it stops raining. I hope they win the game. I hope I win the lottery. I hope things go well, right? Here's hoping for the best. I hope they feel better. I hope I feel better. Hope is this sort of belief that your future will. Give me 1 second. Yeah. Anyways, hope is the belief that your future will be better than the present, and that you'll have the ability to make that happen. Having hope reduces feelings of helplessness, increases happiness, reduces stress, and improves our quality of life. It's one of the single best predictors of well-being across the lifespan. I think that, going back to that quote, hope is a very powerful factor in our lives, and yet we don't seem to give it much thought or credence. And we give even less of either of those to our ability to give hope to others. And if you thought Spider-Man had great power, right? We each have the power to give or take hope away from the people, the students we interact with every day. And to me, that like, there's no greater power than that. The facts though, researchers have found that students who are high in hope have greater academic success, greater attendance rates, higher grade point averages, greater graduation rates, stronger friendships, and just demonstrate more creativity and problem solving than those with lower levels of hope. So they also have lower levels of depression and anxiety and are less likely to drop out from school. And this is my little plug here before I move on. But if you take nothing else away from today's session, and that's not to, again, dismiss or minimize anything that Marla or Jessica is going to share, but I selfishly hope that you take this away. I've placed in the note-taking document a link to a very short article on some research completed in the 50s by a Harvard professor on the power of hope. I already sort of synthesized the research, and by synthesize, I mean I went out and copied and pasted, all the research into a document for you to easily and quickly sort of go to and read. So yes, I did plagiarize, but I did it for you. So you can't really blame me. It's literally only 2 pages, and I'd love for you to read it and tell me what you think, because the findings were quite remarkable, to say the least. And I don't want to sort of ponder on that too long, so that's enough of that. But while our next slide is not about hope, it's about something that we potentially can give to people that might provide some hope. And that is feedback. Now, Susan's probably going to recognize this clip because we've used it together in something in another session. But for everyone else, you might recognize a couple of the characters here on the screen as Elaine and George from the television series Seinfeld. And I know it feels silly for me to say all that, but I realize that not everyone might be familiar with Seinfeld.
We do have some young people in this room.
That's okay, Jessica. You can stop that right now. And for any of our Seinfeld or our seasoned Seinfeld fans, you probably already recognize the infamous Elaine dancing skit. For those that don't know, though, a little backstory: Elaine there on the left loves to dance, but will doesn't equal skill in this case. Elaine, however, is under the assumption that she's a great dancer, though, right? In fact, she has a great attitude, and she also has this sort of fearlessness to do her dancing wherever. We've all met these types of people, though, right? You know who I'm talking about. They over exaggerate their own abilities while you're like, are we talking about the same person? And I liken this picture or this sort of idea of Elaine's dancing or this idea of people over exaggerating their own abilities to those Pinterest fails, right? Those epic fails that you see people try to, recreate something. I can make that cake, right? I can build that table and then after 45 minutes or a day later or whatever it is, the case might be, you're like, no, you can't. So let's watch this clip and see for ourselves regarding Elaine's dancing.
Hey guys, I want to make a toast. Here's to those who wish us well, and those who don't can go to hell. All right, who's dancing? Come on, who's dancing? You want me to get it started? I'll get it started.
Sweet, fancy Moses. Elaine dance.
It's more like a full-body dry heave. Set the music.
Did she do the little kicks and the thumbs?
What, you mean you know about this?
For some time. It was about 5 years ago. I never knew what to say to her about it. It was one of those problems I hope would just go away.
Well, sometimes you can't help these people till they hit rock bottom.
And by then, you've lost interest.
lost respect for me.
How could that be?
Jerry, I mean, it's like the feeling is palpable.
So a few things that stand out to me. Number one is when George says, wait, you knew about this? And Jerry says, for some time, right? And then number two, when Jerry says, it was one of those problems I hope that would just go away. I think we see situations like this every day where you hope, there's that word hope. I just want to call attention to that again, because again, we're always doing it. But you hope that things will correct themselves. But we all know the only way to get better is through sort of that constructive feedback, modeling, and coaching sort of loop. None of which you saw George or Jerry do. However, both could have implemented some feedback in coaching, despite knowing about this issue for like 5 years, at least Jerry knowing about it for 5 years. Clearly, they were able to identify the problem, and they were even disturbed by the problem. But both of these individuals chose to do nothing and unfortunately sat on their thoughts and opinions and gave no sort of constructive feedback. But think about this. What if Elaine received coaching and timely feedback regarding her dancing? Could her skills have improved? Again, thinking back that Jerry, he saw it 5 years ago. Obviously, the answer would be yes, but I'm going to ask you the following, though. Can we as PBIS coaches afford to sit back and not support our teams or even individuals for 5 years?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is obviously no. I don't need anyone to put that in chat or unmute themselves. I think that goes without saying, but let's face it, we can't afford to sit on feedback for even days. In order for feedback to have any meaning at all, it needs to start by being timely, right? And second, it has to connect to a goal. If you're familiar at all with Hattie and any Hattie's research, he talks extensively about, feedback can't just be in his research about feedback. He always talks about feedback having to relate back to something, right? It has to relate back to a path that the student is on, a goal that the student is trying to reach, an expectation the student's trying to meet. There has to be a context for feedback, otherwise it has no purpose. And in the end, the lack of feedback only left Elaine feeling hurt and ashamed, right? She thought she was doing right, only to find out otherwise. Now, you've heard a lot from me. Now we're going to listen to Marla, or what Marla has to say about the importance of feedback and as it relates to the implementation of PBIS. So Marla?
Well, Matthew, thank you so much for setting us up for the next section.
Hey, guys, I want to make a toast.
No, we don't need to.
Here's to those
I thank you again, Matthew. And even though I hope I will share some information, but I have no doubt that the information that I'm sharing, the majority of the individuals in this room are aware of this, but maybe we're going to give you another spin on it. Maybe we're going to give you another aspect of it. Maybe we're going to give you something else that you can take forward. Because when we think about feedback, similarly to encouraging academic behaviors, and there is some great statistics out there that talks about the fact that we very openly give feedback that is positive and encouraging when we're looking at academics. But when it comes to encouraging those scholars that might have some need for some specific learning in behaviors, our feedback is not as positive and it is not as frequent. So we need to realize that when we want to acknowledge the behaviors that we want to see, this feedback will motivate our students as they are actually either initially learning an expected behavior, maintaining expected behavior, or maybe becoming more fluent with use. Because even it doesn't matter. I always say adults are just bigger kids. It takes time to learn a behavior and it takes time to change a behavior. So essential to changing any behavior, whether it's our behavior as an adult or your scholar's behavior, and creating this positive school environment that we have been talking about already this morning. Simply, effective feedback is designed to determine a learner's level of understanding and skill development. to plan the next steps towards achieving the learning intentions or goals. So we actually, and I love Matthew, when you said, it's also about our adults. We have to help our adults and support them, because just because we're the superheroes of PBIS doesn't mean everyone else is on the same learning level as we are. So when we think about feedback, it helps our adults and students focus on positive social behaviors and actions. And the most powerful behavior change tools teachers have in their repertoire is exactly what Matthew said. It's feedback. And he already sort of stole my thunder, because I was bringing out the idea that from visible learning, which is Hattie's work, it talks about feedback to our scholars as well as feedback to our teachers makes their learning visible. Feedback is compelling influence on a learner's achievement. When teachers seek, or at least are open to what learners know, they are able to understand and they can see the growth that the scholars are making. They can see the errors, and then they can intervene to help them not continue to make those errors. Feedback actually just decreases inappropriate behavior. It reduces the need for corrections. And especially when we prime the behaviors we want to see, it also helps to enhance our own self-esteem, our scholars' self-esteem, and build their internal control. So I know that I have always been taught that we need to have at least 5 positives to every negative. So that 5-to-1 ratio is something that I have always been taught. And I know that you have heard it repeatedly in our trainings. And so when you think about that, and it doesn't matter, we might think that that's a lot of positive reinforcement, and I guess it sort of is, but let's face it, what would you prefer to hear? Do you want to hear somebody telling you everything you do wrong without helping you get better? Or do you want to hear also what you do well? And this research goes across content. It doesn't matter if it's business, romantic, relationships, or our learning communities. The actual first research was actually done regarding divorced or married couples, that they showed that if you did at least, and in that research, it was 6-to-1, if you do 6-to-1, you are more apt to stay married. So those of you that are out there that are married or in relationships with significant others, you can actually apply this to home as well. So it's funny that we ask ourselves, why don't we do this naturally? And we don't, because that's also something, an evolutionary function that we have within ourselves. We are actually wired to notice things that are wrong. Because
Making me sound like a Neanderthal now.
maybe a little bit, we're all there though.
Maybe feel like one, because
No one can make you feel that way.
Oh.
You're allowing that to happen.
Mhm.
But anyways, we are wired because when we see things that are wrong, it's going to keep us out of danger. Another natural reason is, as teacher, guess what we went into this field for? We went into this field to help people get better. And that's the other reason why we see maybe what we're doing, what others are doing wrong. We naturally see that because that's what teachers do. But what we're going to hopefully encourage you through the rest of this session is to start to flip that script with others. So that way we can just start to interact with our students more positively, at least 5 times more often when they're behaving appropriately. So that way, when we see our scholar maybe not behaving appropriately, AKA inappropriately or interfering behaviors, we can start to build that repertoire of 5-to-1. Interactions with students are considered positive or negative based on the behaviors in which the scholar is engaged in. And I also want you to realize we can't do this 100% of the time, all the time, day in and day out. So give yourself grace. Negative interactions are going to happen, and they're not always wrong. And they are sometimes necessary, but the words that we choose are critical. And the key here is ratio. And so just a couple interesting fun facts, as one of our colleagues says, as teacher praise increases. The student on task behavior or on task levels also increase in all classes. After withdrawing praise from a classroom, off task behavior increase. So that's saying when we don't give positive praise, our off task behavior increases 8% to sometimes up to 25%. When the rate of criticism was increased, remember what I said, the words we choose are important. Off-task behavior also then increases from 25% to 31%. So just keep that in mind as we keep moving forward in our rediscovery or relearning of feedback. So Jessica, I hear you have some interesting mock data for us to look at. What you got for us?
Of course, I love mock data. I love data in general, even if it's make believe.
Give me 1 second.
Sure.
And
Well, thank you, Matthew, because I was also writing down that we need to share those statistics with the group, because I think that's valuable for you to take back to your teams as well. So Marla, thank you for sharing all of that valuable information. So as we're talking about acknowledgement, as we're talking about feedback, I am naturally brought back into the tiered fidelity inventory, specifically with 1.9, which is that feedback and acknowledgement system. And we're going to take a little moment to kind of really focus on that feature. I will say that in that feature, it's primarily focused on student feedback and student acknowledgement. But we've also had quite a bit of a discussion about teacher feedback and teacher acknowledgement, and even in the comments about staff participation in our system. And I think it's so important that we're not just ignoring some of those teachers that aren't participating, but we are providing feedback to those who are implementing our acknowledgement system. They are teaching those expectations. They are reinforcing, and they're doing what we're asking them to do, because the system won't work if it's just the PBIS team, right?
It takes a building.
It does. It does. So on here, and I believe somebody's copying and pasting. I do have, this is a fake data system that I've built for us to kind of use to have discussions about what could we look at whenever we're considering data. Sorry. I wonder, Matthew, do you mind if we go rogue and if I steal
go ahead.
the screen for a moment?
That might be a nice idea, because then you can just display it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
let me do this.
And I don't think that's going rogue. While Jessica is actually getting that ready to be displayed, I want to also thank and recognize all of those individuals that shared their wins in the chat box. And that in itself is demonstrating the work that you are doing. So thank you so much. Okay, Jessica.
I was gonna say, mine
No,
says that I'm sharing screen.
No,
Okay.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Okay, so this is the link that's in our note-taking document, but I'm gonna pause for just a second to click on this other tab up here at the top, which is my mock walkthrough data. And this is another great way for the team to consider what staff are utilizing our system, what students are receiving it. So what I did was I took just, again, a mock Google form that we could be collecting for our walkarounds or walkabouts, whatever you call them, to kind of notice those trends and identify which staff might need some reinforcements. So I think, again, back to Elaine, if we keep looking and it's the same specific staff member, it's a specific grade level, instead of going, well, eventually they'll catch on. Well, maybe we need to modify the way we're reinforcing our expectations of them. I will also say that I understand that sometimes that can be a difficult conversation. I understand that sometimes you have to be careful to stay in your own lane, but as a team, I think it's still very valuable to share information with your staff about here's the expectations we have for you as staff members. And do our staff know our expectations? Do our students know it? Are we using our acknowledgement system? And I think it just gives you a good opportunity to provide feedback even to the adults. Hey, let's see.
Wait, can I?
Yeah.
can I preface something before you go on? So what you're gonna see here, or what you've seen throughout this year, when we talk about data and we're showing you any sort of mock data, this isn't a special like system or program that only we have access to or that we have to pay for. Everything that you see today or in any of the other recordings or sessions is all done with 3 simple tools. Basically, it's a Google form, which would be our or your referral form. Google Sheets, which again, everyone has readily has access to or availability to, and Google Looker Studio, which used to be Google's Data Studio. All of these charts and graphs are generated through there. It's not a special program. It's nothing that we pay for. It's everything that we like that Jessica, I'm going to say we, that we have created. No, that Jessica has created. And as well as, I mean, she's also helping a few school districts set the same sort of systems up in their own buildings and districts too. So this is not, again, I just want to preface that because I don't want people to think that, you know, what they see here is something that's sort of out of reach for something that they themselves could also have. So I guess think about that. It's something that you as well could do in your own building or district. So keep that in the back of your head.
No, I appreciate that clarification, Matthew, because this is literally, I make a pretend Google form and I link it to the spreadsheet and then I throw it into here. So sometimes it is messy at times because it's all mock data. Sometimes it's a little outdated because no one's actually entering into it. It's just me randomly entering into it when I'm preparing for one of our meetings. But yeah, this is nothing, it looks super fancy, but it's just free Google products that I utilized when I was in a district and now I continue to utilize because I think it's valuable to see your data telling a story. So I feel like this was helping us kind of see where are we with, you know, for example, expectations known by month. And this, again, then I can pull it down by what grade level. So if I want to see just my first grade, and again, this is all mock and this is not an actual school, but we can start to see that how many students were actually able to meet those expectations. We had 100% of them that were able to acknowledge or received their acknowledgement or gave out their acknowledgement. So it's just a way to kind of keep track of our system in general, but then again, use this to provide feedback to our staff that are utilizing the system. So I wanted to share that, but now I will hop back into what I was supposed to talk about.
I apologize.
No, that was my fault. So here is a mock, 100% mock acknowledgement system matrix. This is not the be all end all. This is not the only way that you can do it. I have seen so many other ways, but this is just something I kind of threw together so we could pretend that we are in the Constellation school system. And they are stars, and you can see that here so our high frequency acknowledgement that our mock students receive is something called superstars. So when who gives them out? Well, all of the staff are able to give out these superstars. And when do they give them out? Well, after observing students that are meeting expectations. And then I did put in here a little goal, and it's written a couple times to make sure that we know what is that frequency that we expect our staff to deliver those. So the expectation is that at least one delivered to each homeroom student per week. So if I have 25 kids in my homeroom classroom, I'm expected to get 25 total stars out each week. But again, we've been in this mock system for several years now, and I have no problem being able to deliver those stars to my students throughout the week. Where does it take place? Any location. So I know that the bus drivers can give out those superstars, and I know that the cafeteria workers can give them out. I've seen the custodian even hands them out sometimes. So how are they supposed to do it? Well, the staff gives verbal acknowledgement. I see that you are showing your safety right now by walking in the hall. Thank you so much. Hands the star to the student. And then who receives those? Those are our individual students that are demonstrating those expectations. And again, I put in here that I want at least one to each homeroom student per week. So I should be able to walk around the building and say, have you received a superstar yet this week? And ideally, they should have received at least one in the past week. if we're meeting those staff expectations. And then why are we doing this? What's the purpose? Well, I want to reinforce those desired behaviors, those desired expectations. I want to make sure that students receive that feedback, that what they're doing meets the expectation, especially with that additional, oh, good job. No, I appreciate that you're showing your safety, because we value safety in this school, and you show that by walking in the hall, and that just connects all those dots back together of the purpose of our expectations in general. These are our superstars. Now, we have some different redemptions of those high frequency acknowledgement system. So our students are going to place them on a classroom board to make a constellation. So they get that public recognition as well, because it gets to go up on the classroom board. And then additionally, we have some extra pieces to this so that our classroom teachers are going to keep track of them. So that homeroom teacher, how many stars each student is receiving. So I didn't write this in here, I apologize, but they're going to write their names on it so we can keep track of who's who's. And then students who earn at least 3 stars in a month can earn the student incentive that's decided by that homeroom teacher, that individual classroom teacher. So when we look at our acknowledgement actual data, you'll see students that were able to earn that student incentive of receiving 3 stars or more. Versus then I have another one, which is then the class level incentive, which is if the stars stretch across the entire galaxy, then the entire classroom earns a class level prize. Again, this is not a, what's the word I want, Marla? This is not a exemplar.
It's an example. Remember, there are many features that are out there that are great samples and examples. There is not one way to do this, but I celebrate this, Jessica, because you brought forth the idea that acknowledgements have to be frequent, especially when we are really trying to reinforce a new behavior. But they also need to be sometimes infrequent, or sometimes they are called intermittent. And then there are those long-term celebrations. Everything has to be developmental, though. So we have to think of the age of our scholars that we're working with, the cognitive ability of our scholars, and even the behavioral level of our scholars. So that's the beauty of this acknowledgement. And I just wanted to put a plug in saying, you too can have an acknowledgement system matrix like this. And we dropped a blank one in the chat box for you. So I'm sorry, Jessica, continue on.
So I'm not going to read you through the entire matrix. I didn't really want to get into that top part because I think it helps us look at the mock data. But you can see, as Marla just said, we do have in this mock system, again, it is not an exemplar, and there are definitely some things in this that you would have to ensure that it actually fits your school climate, that it aligns with your community culture as well, and to make sure that this is accessible to all of our students. But here you can see that there is some unpredictable or intermittent opportunities for feedback. You have some long-term opportunities. And again, just focusing back on who's giving it, what's the frequency, why are they getting it? And what is that, that purpose behind it? What are you trying to reinforce? And is it working? So I think even having an audit of your acknowledgement system once a year and saying, okay, here's what we have. We have all these things in place and all this. But is it actually helping to encourage expected behaviors? And if it is, then fantastic, keep it up. But now I'm going to take us down to my acknowledgement tracker. And here's where I can see the class-wide incentive that was earned. So how many of those classrooms got the stars across the entire galaxy? Here I can see the student level. Again, these are mock students. These are not real names. In fact, you'll see some of them duplicated because they're not real names at all. You can see which students received their 3 stars per month. So the teachers were going in and just, again, it's just a Google spreadsheet, and they would check off which students met the criteria for the month. And then down here, we can see individual classroom teachers who's able to, whose classroom is able to get that galaxy. And then again, just looking at the student data in just different ways so that we can tell different stories. Something I would notice is if I actually go, for example, let me pick first grade, and I forget why I want to pick first grade, but I'm going to pick on first grade. Oh, I lost my screen.
Yeah, we see it.
I know. Oh, you still see it. That's fantastic. Hold on. I bumped a button.
Well, you're getting your.
I got it.
You got it up?
Sorry. I don't even know what I clicked on. So whenever I see this first grade, now I have it set, oh my gosh, I did it again. Because I have too many windows open. I apologize. I have this set to kind of highlight specific students that had several months in a row that didn't meet our criteria. And what we did even in some of our mock meetings before was kind of start to look at that student data and when do we need to consider putting some supports into place. So maybe these two students didn't even have any discipline referrals, but they also haven't received 3 stars in a month for almost, well, poor Oda hasn't received it ever all year long. This is a really good conversation piece for your team, but also for that classroom teacher or that grade level to kind of start to assess why are our students not able to meet our acknowledgement system? Why are we not able to give them that feedback? And with this, I noticed that we do have quite a few first graders. And what we could do is we could break it down by the individual teacher if we think it's a teacher concern. And then the PBIS team can provide that support. So I noticed your students aren't really meeting these stars. How can we better assist you with this? You know, are they not meeting those expectations? Are you forgetting to deliver those stars? What's going on? Because we know the value of that acknowledgement system. We know the value of providing students that feedback. So if these two students that are yellowed, if they really are struggling to earn those stars, then we need to make sure that we're putting supports into place to ensure that they have access to our universal acknowledgement system. And even as they do begin those tier 2 interventions, even if they do eventually need tier 3 interventions, we need to ensure that they still have access to those universal acknowledgements, because some of those students are going to need more of that positive feedback, of that acknowledgement for meeting expectations, because I'm sure they're getting a lot of those negative feedback when they're not meeting those expectations. And we could even then digress into maybe Oda doesn't have a single referral, but that's because all of her behaviors are internalized. So we feel bad writing it up because she's not being bad, she's just disengaged, or there's other ways that maybe she isn't outwardly causing a disruption. So we're not documenting it because we're just like Elaine. We're just kind of ignoring it, hoping it'll go away. Well, now it hasn't, but we've also not given her the opportunity for the feedback that our students absolutely deserve.
So Jessica, you made me think that, and I asked that question in the chat, and I so appreciate Carrie responding. The acknowledgement system, even though it is about our scholars' behaviors, it really is about what we need to do as adults. It's about our adult behavior to help build the climate and culture in our building and create that environment of success for our scholars. So it helps keep us true. And I know Carrie's driving, and I don't know why she's putting things in the chat while she's driving. But I appreciate the fact that she even brought that out. Staff, we don't know if we're delivering with fidelity if we don't have something to show. We might think that we're doing this fabulous job when in reality, okay, thank you, Carrie, for not driving anymore. We might be thinking we're doing it, but in reality, we just might be missing some of our scholars. So thanks.
I can't help but think of when you use the term intermittent, I
Yes.
immediately thought of like intermittent dieting.
Oh,
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
because that's a big thing right now. And then I started to relate that to acknowledgements and like, if it goes too long, it's no longer intermittent fasting, it's just starvation. And I think that applies,
yeah.
right? I mean, if all of a sudden you're not getting, the student's not getting feedback, the PBS team isn't getting feedback because you don't know if it's, are we giving them? Are we not giving them? Are they not meeting expectations or are you just not, I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
to me that it's no longer intermittent fasting. It's
Starving.
We're just starving.
Our students are starving.
Yeah.
I like that analogy. And if we remember the last time we were together, we showed the student panel. And the one scholar, she really tugged at my heartstrings because here she had never gotten acknowledgements, but she didn't know why. She didn't get any.
Yeah, she never earned their chocolate bar or
Yes,
whatever
yeah.
they gave out. Yeah.
So our goal here and today is for you to make sure you don't have any scholars that feel that way. even our scholars that sometimes is hard to find what they are doing well, we have to find what they are doing well. Okay, Matthew, do you want to bring up our presentation again? Because now it's time for our participants to do a little bit of work. Thank you, Terry. I don't mean to, am I preaching? I feel like I'm preaching, you're right. But what we want to introduce to you is we stumbled across this wonderful resource that will be on the screen shortly. And it, to me, when I first recognized it and saw it, it was so powerful. And even though we gave you the link for the whole entire presentation, I'm not presentation, the whole entire resource, we're not going to delve into it. But when you open up that resource, you are going to see the power that is in that resource because it breaks it down into all of the different features that we need to look at. And if you just, humor me for a moment, and
I'm so
it
sorry.
should be linked, and we should be able to click right on that.
Oh,
It should be there. So if somebody can display that on the screen, since I'm not sharing, I want to show you the power in this, because even if you are working with a teacher that might have a difficulty in one certain area, this resource gives you avenues to travel. And the other piece I love about it is, and I thank you for being your patience, but it's also divided up into elementary and high school, because sometimes as a high school person, I sometimes thought things were not speaking to me. But this resource actually shows the difference between high school and actually elementary. And as you look through, as Jessica is scrolling, it's not a horribly long document, but it's built so beautifully. And I love the screen that you're on right there on number 10. Jessica, if you can click on that.
it's Matthew.
Oh, Matthew, this is where it takes you. This, I call it a placemat. They actually just call it a figure or a chart. I like placemat. It sounds so much more inviting. But you can see it's broken down into all of these features. But for today, what we are going to go to is, and we're just giving this to you for something new to consider. We're actually going to share with you the one chart, the feature that talks specifically about feedback and the acknowledgement system. So if we can, there it is. And as you look at this matrix, and this is where we're going to break you out into small groups, and you can even choose which area that you want to look at, but it talks about and shares with you the different features of the feedback system that you want to look at. And it is figure 2.4. And thank you for putting that into the chat for everybody.
Page 19.
Page 19, if you, I know you're probably like some of your scholars, we gave you the whole document, so you are in that whole document, but we really want you to focus only on figure 2.4 and page 19. And then Matthew, if you take us to our breakout slide, so that way we can explain what they're going to do a little bit. We want to give you some time to do some individual investigations. And we want you to find the things that are interesting to you. But then the most important piece is, how can you use this information? Because that's what we always want to do. If we are not giving you something that you can take back to your team, take back to your building, take back to your whole entire, even BLTs or TBTs, we need to know that, because that's our job, is to empower you. And in your breakout session, what we want you to do is you're going to, of course, decide who will be your recorder. And you can record it right on your note page document. We need you to decide who's going to be your reporter too, because we need to have a voice. And then if anybody is like me, I am horrible at time. I need somebody to help me with staying on time. So you're going to come back, and we're only going to give you about 8 minutes, 8 to 9 minutes. I like weird times. I do admit that. Keep showing your toes. 8 to 9 minutes to just investigate just this particular slide. And I'm going to call it a slide since it's now on your slide. Figure 2.4 in your small groups. So Matthew, can you tell me, are our breakout rooms ready to go?
Not yet. Give me-
Okay, absolutely. Thank you for putting our task in the chat. What do you find interesting? How can you use this section on feedback tomorrow? Because it really is that powerful. And if you want to take it even further, you can decide how can you use it tomorrow? And then how can you then use it to actually improve, enhance the feedback system that you have in place? Thank you again for signing that recorder, that reporter, and timekeeper.
Muted.
You want automatic.
And Clark and Greta are in the same room. Okay, so Matthew is getting those rooms ready. You are getting your materials ready.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
This is where we need segue music.
No, this is a great opportunity to kind of give you a moment to look at the document. We do apologize, but this is a good chance to kind of look at that page, look at figure 2.4. Notice that it has those critical features, but then maybe you're going to focus on the elementary application, or maybe you're in a high school setting. So you're going to go over to that high school side and start to look at what does that mean in your unique situation.
And again, our groups are going to be random.
Okay.
And they are open and ready to go. Thank you for joining your groups as you move in.
Hey Marla, this is Andrea. Since I'm just observing everything, I'm not going to jump into the room so they can actually talk about their buildings and things that are going on for their feedback.
Thanks, Andrea. Glad that you could join us.
Anytime.
So we know that there is never enough time. And that is one thing that we wish we could do better at, but hopefully it gave you at least some time to look at the document, especially the one on feedback, and find something that you can actually take back and start to even utilize. So we had 3 rooms, really tricky, room 1, 2, and 3. We were really tricky at that time. So from room 1, I think room 1 was Marie's room. Marie, can you share out with us? What was something that you either found interesting or something that you can take back tomorrow?
So we had teachers across all grade levels in our room, and so, but I think we kind of all felt the same there. One thing that stuck out is the use of the word specific across all of these columns is bolded. So it really sticks out. And I think that that's important for all staff members to see, because when you're not very specific enough to students, they're not understanding what their reaction, expectations, responses, all of that should be in a positive way. One thing that was mentioned was, the implication of students engaging one another and praising one another instead of the praise just coming from the teacher or the staff member. And then really repeating to all staff members the 5-to-1 ratio across any grade level, for the 5 praises for each correction. You think back to how many times does it take for the adults to actually listen and follow through, and then we're expecting a child to listen the first time. So the 5 praises, I think, is something that all staff and really parents, in my opinion, should hear over and over again. Would be a good reminder.
Thank you so much. And if Carrie was listening, I wonder if she's saying preach to you as well, because that is so true. There is so much value in what you just said. I don't even want to repeat what you just said, but even just, I hope it resonated with everyone that was in your room as well as in this particular room, because we sometimes give us adults more grace than we give our scholars, when in reality, our scholars have had less time to develop. They really are developing that prefrontal cortex, those executive functioning skills, the social emotional skills. So thank you so much. Okay, room 2. See, who was the spokesperson for room 2? I didn't pop in. Oh, wait, I did pop into room 2. Was that Sarah and Jenna, or was it Jason? Who was our spokesperson?
Hi, so in room 2, we focused on the praise around, students practicing praise to each other. And we talked about having those student PBIS ambassadors as leaders and using them to model and teach other students around them. And then we talked about how are we going to build that capacity for more students to become those leaders. And then we also talked about when we're looking at the students, some of the students that benefit from this are kids that aren't involved in maybe other things and need something that like belongs to them, that they feel like they have a purpose for and helps them grow in their own, and then help other students around them to get better.
Thank you, Jenna, in room 2. And when I popped into room 2, you guys were having a really great conversation. And I believe it was Jason who was, I don't remember who. Oh, Jenna, you asked the question if there was any hint or tricks or tips that they could give you to maybe improve your ambassador program. And I want to just give a shout out. I think it was Jason who said, well, we started by teaching and modeling to our ambassadors so that they knew what we expected. Hopefully I captured that. Okay, Jason. So that's one of the critical pieces. We can't just ask our scholars to do something. We have to teach them the way we want it done. So shout out to room 2. All right, room 3. I think, Jessica, you popped into room 3. Who was the spokesperson to room 3?
I'm not sure, but I feel like the other Sarah wants to share part of their discussion.
All right.
Oh, no, now she froze.
Oh, yeah, she did.
She did freeze.
Can I just say, while we're waiting for Sarah to pop in, I was in that room and they had a really great discussion. I know Sarah has been in and out and had a lot of things come up. So they had a great discussion about the high school level and what that feedback looks like and what it looks like to provide incentives for that that high school level student. And I think the best thing about the breakout rooms are that, yeah, that's the assignment. Go ahead and look at feedback, have a quick conversation. But if there are more pending needs and the conversation goes a little differently, that's fine too. So they had a really great interaction. How they're adjusting. And that's the other thing, is it's a learning experience. You're constantly adjusting. It's like action research, really. It was a really exciting conversation. And I don't know, I took over for my room, which I shouldn't have. But, I just wanted to give them a time to think about it, because I know we hadn't assigned those roles right before we left.
No worries. And Sarah, it looks like you're in a stable environment. Did you want to add anything to what Jane was saying?
I'm in Joe Fueline's office. It's very stable in here. Okay. I'm sorry. And I told my group I'm like doing a couple different things right now. So I apologize. And I don't know what just happened the past couple of minutes. But yeah, it was good collaborating. We were talking, I think specifically, I was sharing an example of the high school level where we are trying to be more intentional with that feedback for students about how to meet those marks on the matrix, how it's attainable for everybody. How last year when we were rolling out all of our incentives, and I was kind of sharing our incentive levels with all the 3 schools with the group that I was in, you're throwing stuff out, and without that feedback, it gets a little lost. Like, why is she getting that and I'm not? Oh, only this kid can get these wins or the incentive invitations, but I don't. So I know for the high school team, it is really giving the power to the students so they know. And it's one thing to say this is what we're doing, but it's another thing to continuously discuss it, to model it. And then I shared with them a little bit, when you have those tier 2 groups that we're all starting in all the schools, you're able to have one-on-one conversations. So our PBIS lead here, Megan, made a flyer, and she started with the mentors. Our small group of tier 2 kids, anybody that was a mentor got that, flyer about advertising for our spring incentive. So now, okay, it's January. How can you make some of those changes, or what do you see for yourself at the end of the year? So the mentors are having those conversations with the mentees. And I think that's what you mean by feedback, because again, I apologize, I've been in and out. So we shared some things like that.
Well, I'm going to echo Jane by saying it sounds like it was a very valuable conversation, and that you guys provided that space, because that's truly what we want to do, is provide this space where you have this opportunity to talk to others that you may not have had the opportunity to talk with. I mean, literally, we introduced at the beginning, we have individuals from Ashtabula, Trumbull, Mahoning, and Columbiana County on this Zoom call right now. So
my favorite quote from that meeting, from that little breakout room, was, "I'm going to have to connect with you." And that's the whole purpose of this. So we do apologize that room wasn't a longer time, because there was such a rich conversation there, but that's absolutely what we want. We want you to find other people struggling with the same things, or those that have overcome the same struggles that you're experiencing now. And I'm also going to challenge you, without asking permission, but even in our follow-up email, if you have a formal acknowledgement system written down, it doesn't have to be the same format that I shared earlier, but if you have something that you're doing, and maybe it's not the best in the world, but it's working for you, and you're willing to share it with the network, We're gonna, in our follow-up email after this session is over, I am gonna ask you if you're willing to share that with us so that we can then share it out with the network. Because I think the more you just see how people in the region are using an acknowledgement system and how is it working for you, I think that's the greatest way for us to learn from each other is what have you tried and are you still doing it? So I am gonna challenge you with that and Marla and Matthew will be fine with that.
And remember, there is no perfect way. There is not one way. And so that's why we want to celebrate the work that you are doing. So we really want to take a break now. We need you to get away from your computer. We need you to stretch. We want you to not look at a screen. Don't answer an email. Do something for 5 minutes. And then we're going to come back and we're on the latter half of, actually less than half. We're on the downward slide of our time together. So 5 minutes, set your timer, and we will see you back at about 10:10.
Okay.
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
Hopefully you actually did turn off your vision from the computer, stepped away, stretched your neck, stretched your legs, refilled your coffee cup, teacup, school appropriate liquid refreshment. And now we'd like to just go into a few updates that we want to make sure that you are aware of. And the first one is, of course, our TFI Tuesdays. I know that our, love those jazz hands.
Thank you.
TFI Tuesdays, I just put in the chat box our YouTube channel. Remember again, we had that look.
Click that button and turn it blue, or what do they say? I'm sorry.
I have no idea what it is. It's all on you, Jessica. But
Got it.
we will be recording our final TFI Tuesdays for Tier 1, and that will be posted soon. But again, our goal for TFI Tuesdays was to provide a consistent message across our region and to hopefully just give you a little tidbit of just refreshing your memory of what it is, or maybe not your memory, but maybe you need additional support in moving forward with another individual. The next update that we want to make sure that you are actually aware of is a new resource. It's a fabulous new resource. And if you remember, some time ago, we had this platform, I'm going to call it, called the Learning Management System, that had all of these videos that you could use with your staff. But the problem was not everybody could get to it. In this case, everyone can access it. You do have to create an account, and as you can see, the screenshot has my name on it, but it's not difficult to create. It's very user-friendly, and it will provide you some great resources. So that way, as you're building the capacity of others, you can utilize this because it'll send that consistent, strong message. You can always cardinalize it. That's hard to say. You can always strutherize it or Sebringize it, but it will give you the strong foundational information that you need to build others' capacity. And then probably the reason why many of us have tuned in today is we know that it is a busy time of year and it is the recognition time. And we have just a few updates for you. For all of you that sent in your intent to apply, thank you. Thank you so much for doing that. And if your intention is to apply, our intention is to support you in doing that. And so, Jessica, can you give us a little bit of overview of what we need to know as we move forward? Because there's something pretty important coming out tomorrow.
Yes, so for those of you who have submitted your intent to apply for that recognition, the process for uploading that evidence has changed this year. So what I'm going to do really quickly is just kind of show you, I'm going to steal the screen again. Sorry, Matthew.
Good.
I don't think it's stealing if you tell us.
Hold on, now I have to find it.
Never mind.
Unacceptable. Okay. Okay, so in the very near future, no later than tomorrow, those of you who submitted your intention will receive a link for a Google folder where all of your evidence will be uploaded. We have a draft email ready, but we're just finalizing all of the information. So this is that mock school district that has superstars, their Constellation Intermediates. They received their folder. This is similar to what your folder could look like if you, for example, applied for silver recognition, because I can see that right away because I see tier 1 and I see tier 2, which means that that school was applying for silver. If you are applying for gold, you would have tier 1, 2, and 3. And if you are only applying for bronze, you will have everything except for that tier 2 folder that you see on the screen.
Jessica, who will get the folder?
So when you filled out that form, the intent to apply form, there was a point person for each building. Some of those I actually had a couple email addresses. So that's one of the reasons that I have to clean it up, because it's going to yell at me when I try to enter 2 email addresses with the word "and" in between. So that's one of the slight delays there is just cleaning up that information and ensuring that it gets to the right people. But those people can also share it with their team because we don't want one person to have this entire load on their shoulders. So you are welcome to share that link with other team members, with other administrators. You are welcome to do that. Just know that the access to that link will close at the end of the day on May 1st. So that's when all of the evidence has to be entered into your folders. So what I want to really quickly do here is show you, here was my mock acknowledgement matrix that my team had created, and I'm just I pulled it out of my digital binder. I'm gonna go over here. I'm gonna download. Now you can make it a Word document. I think it's easiest just to make it a PDF. So I'm gonna download that as a PDF. It's gonna go into my download folder. Now I know that that is within tier 1. So I'm gonna open up my tier 1 folder. And here you'll notice there are now subfolders for every single section of that application. So each row has required evidence and each one of those has its own unique folder. So you don't have to just throw it into one big old pot. Everything is nice and organized. So I know that my acknowledgement matrix is going to go into the folder that says feedback and acknowledgement. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up. Now I'm in here. I could physically drop the file from my folder off of my desktop. If that's too challenging, I can do new file upload. And my Zoom bar is in my way. But here is my mock acknowledgement matrix that I just downloaded. I'm going to go ahead and open that up. It's going to start uploading. And now I have that piece of evidence is added to the folder. I can check off my next item on my list.
So Jessica, are you sharing with me that the application tells me exactly what evidence I need to upload?
Correct.
Can we maybe show that application?
I feel like we need.
I'm challenging the screen sharer.
Yes. So let me hop back. So I'm back at Constellation Intermediates. I don't think the actual, and yeah, it's not in here because I have to upload mine. So challenging me. Hold on one second.
And well, I'm challenging Jessica. Are you also sharing with me that we are not supposed to use Google links?
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure that I'm hearing you correctly. So everything would probably be best if it was either a PDF, and I would probably lean to a PDF because it's more universal.
Yeah.
Okay. So all of the little artifacts that we have to submit should be downloaded as a PDF. Okay, I just keep repeating that for myself.
And it isn't required to be a PDF, but I strongly recommend, because then you're not going to lose any of your formatting. You don't want something to get lost in that translation and for it to not be clear what you were actually trying to achieve.
Communicate, yes.
Yeah.
Because remember, the important piece is here that it's not staying in our region. And we have been given explicit instructions that whichever region does get our region, no one is reaching out to the schools to actually clarify anything. So make sure whatever you submit is exactly clear and telling the story that you want to tell. So this is the application, right, Jessica?
Correct. So this was the intent to apply that was due on Monday, February 27th. So all of that information came to me. I sorted through it, finalizing some details right now. Here are all of the application requirements that I encourage you to double check, because I know some of you just click to apply and now you're going to double check that everything is in place.
Is this a fillable PDF?
It is.
Thank you.
So once you download it,
Save it as?
yeah, and you should be able to enter right in here. Now, this information is your building program, the demographic information. So you might have to work with your school secretary even to find some of this information possibly. But somebody in the building absolutely knows this information. Your school profile template, sorry, this one you might have to reach out to your dean or one of your other administrators to find out. Now, we are well aware that this data changes literally every day. So this is to give us give you even a good idea of where were you last year? Where are you this year? Now, something new this year, though, they are going to pull the actual state level data for your
suspension.
all of your suspension and expulsion data And that's going to be one of the pieces in the scoring rubric. But they're not able to pull that until August. So that's why we can't even tell you who earned or who did not earn recognition until September is when we will finally be able to reveal. And that's why the district application for this year is not even coming out until next September, because we won't know which buildings received recognition, and therefore we don't know which districts are eligible for applying for recognition. So we don't want to make districts go through the process if they don't have enough buildings that are eligible. So this is some good information for you to just know and for your team to reassess every year. But we realize that this information will change. So there's no specific criteria for this because it's
fluid.
Yes, thank you. The SAS is a requirement this year. That is a new requirement. If you have already given the SAS within the past 12 months, so if you gave it at the very end of May last year, it does still count. We do encourage you to give it at least once a year. We know some schools give it more often than that. If you need assistance setting up the SAS, we can, the self-assessment survey is the SAS. We can absolutely support you with that. So if you need it, we can help you get it set up electronically so that you can send a link out to your staff and have all of that information collected. So please reach out to us if you need support, or if you're working directly with an SST consultant, they can get it set up for you. Forgive me, are the ESC consultants able to set up the SAS?
They are able to set up the SAS.
Okay, I thought so. I didn't want to make them do something they aren't able to do. So if you have an ESC consultant that you work directly with and you haven't yet set up the SAS, they can help you with that as well. But please let us know. You don't have to do this paper and pencil. Please don't. In fact, your staff will not be very happy about that. We know some schools use a Google form for this. You're allowed to do that. We just really encourage you to use the PBIS apps. It's free. And it just helps collect that data from year to year to year. So if you need support with that, we can happily help you with that. And then here's those requirements for each building level. So in order to earn bronze, you have to score a 70% on the TFI. And then you have to score an 80% on this rubric within the application, which I'll show you in a minute. So those are two different scores. I'm sorry, Marla, I feel like I'm interrupting you.
No, I'm just clarifying in my head to make sure I'm hearing everything clear. You're telling me that the application is sort of divided up into two components. The one side has the TFI features, which is what they call it. And then last year, we used to have this separate rubric. So this year, the rubric is built right into the application?
Correct.
Perfect. That's beautiful. Thank you.
So if you're applying for silver recognition, you have to earn still a 70% on both tier 1 and 2 TFIs. And you have to score an 80% within this rubric here on both tier 1 and 2. So we are scoring, the very first thing that's, I'd say we, but it won't be us, we'll be scoring other schools outside of our region. But the first thing we'll look at is we'll review all of the bronze level evidence. And if it scores an 80% on this rubric, then we'll move into that tier 2 folder, but we don't move on to the tier 2 folder until we've truly scored all of the tier 1 evidence. And then the same thing for then that gold level recognition. We're going to score all of tier 1. If it meets at least 80%, then we're going to move down to tier 2. And if it still meets the criteria, we're going to go down to tier 3 and continue working through that evidence.
So just pause real fast. Any questions on what Jessica has shared thus far? Because it is a lot. And even though it's not complicated, it's new. And so whenever something's new, we just want to make sure we're as clear as possible.
I do have a question.
Yes,
So
Jenna.
if we are in bronze and like, if you're stagnant in bronze, what is like moving forward? Is there a certain time that you have to go to the next level, or what happens if you don't get to the next level?
Well, first, Jenna, you may feel stagnant, but you're probably not stagnant. You're always making movement forward. Your TFI scores.
No,
will
I
help
agree
you.
with that.
And I want to celebrate you with that. So your TFI scores will tell you your growth. There is no time limit per se as moving forward through this recognition system. However, our report card tells us that we have to be fully implementing PBIS by the end of this school year, if I am remembering that correctly. And so on our report card, the letters are very confusing because they are actually reverse of what they should be. So we should be a letter F by the end.
Or F.
E or F by the end of this school year. But the recognition system is completely up to a school district or building to determine. You have the fluidity, the freedom to either decide to apply or not apply. You have the option to apply numerous times for bronze until you're ready for silver, or you have the opportunity to apply for bronze, be awarded, and maybe wait until you're ready to apply for silver. There's no set requirements. Did that answer it, Jenna?
Yeah, and then with you said the report card.
Yeah.
I guess I just have to look more into that.
And we can help you through that. That's probably is another conversation we should probably resurrect, even though we've said it, we need to bring it back.
And I appreciate that you're not rushing into
Yeah.
those tier 2 and tier 3, because just because it is the requirement on the report card that we have to be at this level. We've also seen when schools try to rush it and just put everything into place, it fails miserably. So truly ensuring that your tier 1 foundation is absolutely solid is essential before you can move up into that tier 2 support. So you probably have some tier 2 supports in place, but not system-wide, or it's not clear.
Yeah.
But I appreciate just taking the time to really work through the process. I understand the frustration of feeling stagnant. And I agree with Marla that this is definitely a conversation that we should continue to have with the network, even because I don't think you're alone with that.
Thank you.
But I do love the way the application shows me the rubric on the other side. So it really gives me the answers to the test.
Correct.
Okay.
So here you'll notice this first row, tier 1 TFI with a score of 70% or higher. That's where you have just that one folder that says TFI, and that's for all of the tiers. So you just drop it in there. This not scored yet is where the SST reviewer will enter the score. You're welcome to print it and score yourself just so you have an idea of where you feel like you might score. Then again, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but you can see then the next row says walk through data. It's page 28 of the TFI. And again, this is different this year, that it can be completed internally by a building coach or team. We do strongly recommend that you reach out to an outside person to really get a good feel for an honest feel for what's going on in your building. And again, if you need any assistance with that, we already have some walkthroughs scheduled with other schools. So if you want support with that, again, reach out to your SST consultant, your ESC consultant, but it does not have to be one of us. But there's a folder just for that. The next row is the SAS information that's already added into the application itself. So there's not a folder for it because you already entered that information. So here you can see how the folders were created by exactly what piece of evidence you're required to submit for your recognition.
And as you go through it, because we still have time, it's not due until May 1st. So as you take this time to go through it with your team, because please, as a team, if you have questions or if you aren't certainly clear on something, let us know, let your ESC consultant know, let your SST consultant know, because we are here to support you. Because again, if your intent is to apply, our intent is to help or to support.
So in the folder and in our slideshow, I know we're running out of time here. There are some FAQs for the schools as you're working through. The big ones are really just links will not be accepted. They will not open a link. It has to be an actual document added to each of those folders. Also, make sure that you redact any student information on there, especially once we get up into tier 2 and tier 3, where there's some of those individual plans. Please try your best to remove all identifiable student information from any of the evidence that you are submitting. And now I lost my slides, so I don't know if there's another big one.
We do have some of the high flying reminders that's on one of the ending slides that we want to make sure that you have those. But I think you have all of our emails We will respond quickly or as quickly as possible to any questions that you might have. Are there, just out of curiosity, while we're getting ready to put the link into the chat for our feedback for today's session, are there any questions that you have right now that maybe you're thinking about?
Sarah has one.
Thanks. I think I heard you say this. So the district application then is going to be on pause. Am I right in saying that? Until you have ensured that multiple buildings have qualified in your district.
Correct.
So a
And-
time frame for that is not going to be until
September.
September. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, there is an exact date on the website and I'm struggling to find it in my rush.
I always worry about giving exact dates because of obvious reasons.
No, I thought I heard you say it, and I know that there was a previous email about that, future timing for that. I just wanted to clarify that we were on the same page with why and how that happens, and I get it. So all good. Thank you.
Yeah, so the website says that district awards you'll be able to apply for that from September 25th through October 6th, but we will absolutely keep in touch with our districts that are eligible for that. Once we get those numbers in, we're going to try our best to keep tabs on everybody to kind of assist you with that because this is so incredibly new this year and different.
We're working through some of those little small details as well. Giving Jessica a shout out for creating all of those folders. It was monumental, but it was easier. Well, I shouldn't say easier, but it was probably best if only one person did that, because then we knew that it was going to be done consistently. But we know that we've given you an awful lot to think about. We have either the QR code on the screen or actually in the chat box, if my enter button will work for me today. I actually put the link in it as well. We really do take your feedback. We look at it to try to see what we could do better. And we're always open to suggestions. Once again, if you do need the SAS open, let us know, because I'm with Jessica. Please don't do a paper and pencil. You can, you really can, but don't, because it's just so much easier to do it electronically. But
We also encourage you to register for our next 2 sessions. So if you do have additional questions as you are uploading that evidence or as you are pulling it all together, we are here to support you through that. So we do have April 6th and April 20th, where we're really going to dedicate some time to answer questions, provide any supports. This has been another great opportunity to see how are other people doing things, but we do strongly recommend you register for those events if you have not yet.
And we are toying with doing another one that may be at different hours, because we know that this is a difficult time for some of our friends to get to visit with us. So we are thinking about adding additional ones, especially if we hear that it is needed from the region. But I thank you truly for joining us and spending a small amount of your morning with us. And we do apologize for going over, but thank you for sticking with us. And we will also still hang out in the room if you need anything. And also, thank you again for filling out the feedback form. But for me, thank you for being PBIS Crusaders.